Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Weird World podcast. Dean waved at me for the record. My name's Carrie.
I'm Dean.
And yes, you heard that right. There is only two of us here.
We're empty nesters for tonight.
For a few hours,
They're
maybe.
out gallivanting. So we decided to do a podcast without those little bastards.
With adult beverages as well.
Yes, I'm having a Topo Chico hard seltzer. I believe it is guava something. And you're having something that tastes like piss.
Oh, my Lord.
Sorry, we won't get the sponsorship of the
Yeah. Kona Spiked Island Seltzer, passion fruit orange guava flavor.
Sounds good. Tastes awful.
It's not bad.
Agree to disagree. Okay.
0 sugars, only 2 grams of carbs, and 100 calories.
And an aggressively awful flavor.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Just so everybody knows, Dean thinks if he doesn't like something, it's truly awful.
It's a
objectively.
fact. It's simply a fact.
It's not
an
a
objective fact. No, that's not true. There are some things. I'm backing off of that. There are some things that I know I like. I don't like tomatoes, but I totally get people liking tomatoes. I don't like mustard or beans, and if you like mustard or beans, you're an evil spawn of Satan.
Yeah.
That's just those differences.
No, there shouldn't
Carrie.
be. What's
okra.
the difference?
I don't like okra. Totally get people who like an okra.
What's the difference?
I don't know. My subjective opinion.
You're a dork. As he drinks another drink. No, what? Dean, tell us something weird.
There you go. So today we are going to delve into the issue of alien abduction.
Wow.
With one of the most famous abduction cases ever. I don't know if you've heard of this or not. When I say famous abduction case, it's famous within a relatively small part of the population, but still.
I'll take a stab. Is it Betty? What's her name?
It is not Betty. That is probably the most famous.
Yeah.
Betty and Barney Hill, but this is
There
not
you
that.
go.
We'll do that one day. I do want to do that, but this one's if anything, is a little stranger. Betty and Barney Hill almost become a trope. If you take it in isolation, in 1961, the story was weird and out there and strange. Now it almost seems hackneyed because it's been copied, this car that stalls and all that kind of stuff and the experimentation. Betty and Barney Hill really formed the rough shape of abductions into what they are today.
So are you saying it didn't really happen to Betty and Barney?
Betty and
Hill?
Barney? We'll save that for the episode we do Betty and Barney.
I know, because it could have. And then everybody after them is a copycatter.
RR is really happening, and these aliens are doing similar things to different abductees.
That's true.
Mm-hmm. So today we're going to tell the story of Linda Cortile.
Wait a second.
Have you heard of that?
No, but I just noticed something. Betty and Barney. Like Betty and Barney Rubble.
Yes.
From the Flintstones.
Okay. Damn. Quite the insight. Carrie act like, oh my God. Eureka. I have discovered something pretty important. They were named after the Rubbles.
Yeah.
I don't think that's true.
Okay, sorry, no.
Okay. So Linda Cortile, I'll give you the bare bones of what happened because we'll get into the details in a little bit. But Linda Cortile was sleeping in her bedroom in 1989 in Manhattan when she was pulled out of her apartment by a blue beam
Through walls and windows
through a
and
wall
such? Okay.
and into the warm embrace of an alien spaceship where they did some things to her.
What, was it truly a warm embrace? Was it a pleasant experience for her?
Not super pleasant, but it didn't seem to freak her out all that much at all.
Okay.
But although that's Linda, and she described they're gray aliens, the typical, big eyes, big heads, skinny limbs, short, the stuff, the aliens they pulled out of the Roswell wreckage kind of a thing.
Were they naked or did they have clothes
I
on?
don't know. And it's funny you say that because most of what I read, they don't really describe the aliens that much, other than to say that they're basically grays.
Yeah.
So she was abducted and put back into her apartment after a couple hours or so. And it became a real cause célèbre. And what I want to start with is why it became such a big case. So we're going to introduce a couple of critical characters into this first. A person named John Mack and a person named Bud Hopkins. Those people are critical to this, particularly, I guess, the latter. But we'll start with the former. We'll start with John Mack.
These are movie names.
John Mack?
John Mack and Bud Hopkins.
They kind of are.
Yeah.
Bud Hopkins would be like a stuntman, and John Mack would be the actor, probably, or maybe the director.
No, I mean character names.
Oh,
in a
okay,
movie.
gotcha. John Mack, though, was a real person. That was his real name. He was a Harvard University psychiatrist. He had in fact, won a Pulitzer Prize for about his biography of T.E. Lawrence, who most people know as Lawrence of Arabia. It was kind of a psychological study of T.E. Lawrence. He had studied childhood nightmares and was generally by the 70s and 80s, was a very well-respected, again, Harvard University psychiatrist in their psychiatry staff or psychology department. I'm not sure. But then his research took a strange turn. First, he started to study drugs and kind of things that sort of expanded consciousness. This is 70s and into so this is
a little LSD mushroom action.
He worked with people who did do that. Then his wife, she was also something of she's kind of a new ager. She developed a breathing technique that she said expanded one's consciousness. So you don't even have to drop some acid. You can just breathe.
It's hyperventilated.
And
it's
voila.
like the choking game that tweens do now.
I don't think I want to hear any more about that.
Okay.
I'm upset that he even brought that up. She worked with a group called a new age group called the Esalen Institute in California, which was, I don't want to, mischaracterize it, but they're a little culty and very new age and very strange. And she got into things like reincarnation and came to believe, she got into reincarnation and John, her husband, kind of followed her and got into reincarnation. He came to eventually believe that he had been a Russian father in the 16th century who saw his 4-year-old son decapitated by the Mongol hordes. So
that's terrible.
He was kind of into the rabbit hole. John Mack, this, again, fairly prestigious psychiatrist working with Harvard.
Yeah.
He was also working with, you mentioned there was a Czech psychoanalyst named Stanislav Grof who experimented with LSD, and that was a major sort of almost not, mentor is probably not the right word, but Grof got Mack into these kinds of studies.
Well, they were probably ahead of their time. I mean, they were of their time, but...
if you know the conclusions, they were not ahead of their time.
Well, no, of course, but I mean...
I know what you're talking about. You're talking about treating mental disorders and mental afflictions with microdoses and things like that. This was not that.
Yeah.
This is
No,
more
I know,
new age,
but
expanding consciousness kind of stuff.
Yes, but that's part of it, I think. And I think that,
Yes, I suppose.
I mean, they had an idea, right?
Yes.
That this could be therapeutic.
But remember, I've said this before, and I know that it's a fine line, but doctors, psychiatrists, they're not scientists. It's not the same thing. What they do is not the scientific method. What they do is they learn things, very technical things, very difficult studies, but they're not researchers. There are medical researchers. Those people are scientists.
Yes.
Psychiatrists are not scientists. They don't work in the scientific method every day. Again,
Correct, not the ones
John
that
Mack
are
was a
treating
biographer.
patients, yeah.
Yes, which is what he did. He was not so he was not really a scientist. That sounds weird, but it really is true, and it's a meaningful distinction. They didn't use rigorous experimental methods and things like that. That's not what they did or understood, especially not back then.
They were dabblers.
It's not that. It's not that. It's a different field. They do different things. They learn different things, and they have different methods.
When they were experimenting with LSD and stuff like that, they were dabbling in it.
Yeah, I don't know. I bet you those weren't super rigorous. Let's do the covariance test.
Yeah.
No, they weren't doing that. ANOVA and COVA. Plus, by this point, John Mack became something of an embarrassment to Harvard, as you might understand. So they kind of scolded him in a letter, but ultimately they left him in place. They didn't fire him. And they basically cited academic freedom. Some John Mack supporters say, he was exonerated, but he wasn't exonerated. It was more like, we don't want to make this guy a martyr. We have a lot of people at Harvard who really do value academic freedom. They think he's crazy, but he has a right to be crazy. He's a tenured professor. That's, so he was left alone. He stayed at Harvard. But eventually, that was the 1980s wore on. Mack took another endeavor. He became obsessed with UFOs, and specifically with UFO abductions. So
Seems a little out of the realm of a psychiatrist.
It's completely.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends. I mean, he's looking at the psychology of these abductees.
Oh, okay.
In a sense.
Okay, that's different.
But he also used hypnotic regression as one of his methods to elicit these abduction stories from dozens of people who, remember, by definition, came to him already thinking they were abducted by aliens.
Right.
So there's the scientific method. That's a selection bias. But he was on the Oprah Winfrey Show. Shocker! Oprah had him on.
Wow.
Go fig. He was published in the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, Time Magazine. So because he was pretty big deal. So he's publishing this kinds of stuff in some meaningful publications and getting the word out on some major TV shows and things like that. He even had a program at Harvard called the Program for Extraordinary Experience Research, which was funded in part by a Rockefeller scion, Lawrence Rockefeller. So he was a pretty big deal, and he's bringing it, not the mainstream's too much of to say, but he was bringing a lot of attention to this alien abduction phenomenon. By the end of the 1980s, Mac was he was down the rabbit hole pretty deeply. So he was ready to go even deeper when he met a guy named Bud Hopkins. Bud Hopkins was earlier he had been this kind of trendy, very successful abstract impressionist artist. He knew like Jackson Pollock and some of the big, de Kooning and some of the big abstract artists. He was a successful artist. He, though, over time, had morphed into this UFO expert, and specifically this alien abduction expert and guru kind of a thing. It traces back, he would later say that back in 1964, he was on Cape Cod, and he had seen a UFO, and that kind of gave him the bug, and he went from there. And then later on in the 60s, he did kind of a solid for a neighbor. A neighbor came to him and said, you know what? I saw a spaceship land in a park in Fort Lee, New Jersey, and about 9 or 10 really little tiny aliens came out of the spaceship. And would you look into it for me? And so Hopkins did. So he kind of just started. That was kind of the beginning of him researching these UFO phenomena.
Why would you ask your artist friend to look into?
He must have known he was into it already, because remember he already seen the UFO, and he had written about it. Hopkins was writing about UFOs and these in things like the Village Voice and even Cosmopolitan. He was kind of part of the New York literati set, because he's New York publications. They publish things by New Yorkers. They don't claim they do, but they do. And there's a real New York centric bias to these things, especially back then. So since he was this famous New York artist, he got his articles about UFOs and stuff like that in Village Voice and Cosmopolitan. Mm-hmm. So this is kind of the beginning of the alien abduction craze or events. And those who thought they had been abducted by aliens with all sorts of terrible things happening to them began to contact Hopkins. He became identified because they read it or heard about his articles and things like that. So they started to contact him.
They read his piece in Cosmo.
In Cosmo, or heard about it. Or they probably did. I'm sure a lot of these initial ones were from New York City.
Yeah. Well,
you're right. Village Voice is more New York.
People in Ohio read Cosmo.
They do. Reluctantly, and they hide it in the brown cover.
No, they don't.
No, they don't. My mom read Cosmo. Cosmo was a women's magazine.
Really?
Actually, it was a men's magazine, and then by the 60s and 70s, it became more of a women's magazine. Yeah, Cosmo was kind of considered. I just remember when I was a kid, it was considered kind of a women's magazine.
Oh yeah, I'm sure it's.
But it wasn't originally that.
I think it still is. Yeah.
Is it really? Okay. Okay, I checked into that, and no, Cosmo was not a men's magazine. It was kind of a general interest literary magazine for most of its existence until, I guess, the 1960s. Sorry about that, Cosmo. Hopkins responded to this by sort of just lunging into this alien abduction movement whole hog. And he soon kind of became the father of the abductee phase. He became kind of this mainstreamer of alien abduction to a degree. Again, I don't exaggerate. It was never really mainstream, but he brought it to a much, much wider audience. And he did this through a 1981 book called Missing Time, talking about alien abduction. So he'd been doing this research for years now. He wrote this book in 1981. It was a big seller, and that really brought the whole phenomenon into. Do you have your phone with you?
Yeah.
Can you look up When Communion was written? That was the Whitley Strieber book that also brought alien abduction into a huge, huge, huge wide audience. So when Hopkins met Mac in early 1990, January of 1990, Hopkins was just beginning to investigate another abduction case which had fallen into his lap that he thought was more spectacular than most. He was looking into the case of Linda Cortile.
You want to know?
Yes.
1987.
1987. Okay, so by those two, Strieber and Hopkins wrote those two important abduction books. And it became. Do you recall? I mean, it was a kind of. I remember it very well. I remember lots of stories going around. Lots of people saying they're abducted. It became quite the thing there in the 80s.
Yeah.
So Hopkins is investigating this Linda Cortile case in early 1990 when he just happens to meet John Mack, this Harvard psychiatrist who's also into UFOs. And so Hopkins gave Mack a bunch of letters from people claiming they had been abducted. He'd been collecting these things for years. So he gave Mack, here's a box of letters. Tell me, you're a psychiatrist. What do you think? Mack was instantly hooked. They just seemed so normal to him. They came from every walk of life. They were like students, prison guards, homemakers, business people, everybody. Seemingly such super normal people. And a lot of them said they had physical proof. They had cuts or sometimes little scoop marks out of them. And they claimed this is a proof that I was experimented upon and scrapes and things like that. They also occasionally had some kind of witnesses back up the stories. Like sometimes they said, oh, and my husband or wife saw that I wasn't there when I was in the alien ship or something like that.
Sure.
These letters talked about other witnesses who had seen, lights in the sky, UFOs, around the time that they were abducted. Again, John Mack not understanding cause and effect, or understanding the validity of, or the lack thereof of eyewitness testimony, let alone the fact that there's some letters claiming eyewitness testimony that may or may not have been real. John Mack didn't matter. He believed everything. He was omnivorous in his belief, in his lack of guile. The witnesses, they just couldn't be all wrong. The people were too normal. They couldn't make this up. They couldn't all be deluded.
How does he know they're normal?
Because they were students and prison guards and business people and homemakers.
So all
they
students
were normal.
are normal. All homemakers are normal.
Of course, obviously. They couldn't make this stuff up. This was a man who had studied psychology.
Yeah.
Didn't just believe them unequivocally.
That's weird.
So something more, I think, was going on in John Mack's own head at this point.
Yeah.
But he believed him, and he believed everything about it, and he became a big proponent of it. And he actually later read a book of his own about it in 1996. So Bud Hopkins and John Mack together would make Linda Cortile kind of niche famous in the 1990s. So now let's go back. Okay. Here's what happened to Linda. It's November 30th, 1989. She was a 40-something, I believe she was a homemaker at the time. She was married, had 2 kids. So she's asleep in her bedroom in her apartment. Living in Manhattan. Her, I don't know what her husband did, but they lived in Manhattan. They lived in a high-rise apartment complex. It had hundreds of units.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was multiple buildings or not. I think it was. It was near the Brooklyn Bridge in kind of lower Manhattan. And it was on their unit was on the 12th floor. It's about 3:15 in the morning, November 30th, 1989. Linda kind of just sort of wakes up a little bit, and she looks out into the murkiness around her, and she realizes that she's not alone in her bedroom. There are 3 people? ? Humans, but not quite humans.
Yeah.
Standing there looking at her in her bedroom. She freaks out.
Well, presumably her husband's there?
Her husband's lying asleep next to her.
Okay.
So she screams.
Yeah.
This, though, and some insistent shaking of him does not wake up her husband, who remains dead asleep, lying right next to her throughout this entire event. He never has any eyes or ears on anything. He's asleep throughout the entire event.
This sounds like my dream when Lisa was throwing blocks at me.
It does sound like a dream, doesn't it?
Yes. Or when the witch came into our room and I tried to scream and wake up Lisa and she wouldn't wake up.
Now, but you were screaming in your dream, right?
Well, I felt like I was awake.
Yeah, I know. But you were screaming in your dream.
Yes.
So.
Well, no, I was, you know how like when you scream and it comes out like a whisper almost?
Yeah.
It's not a real scream. That's what it was like. Okay. I couldn't really scream. I was trying to scream.
But were you ever awake or were you asleep the whole time? You were probably asleep the whole time.
I'm assuming I was asleep,
yeah,
yes.
You were. Okay.
But it feels...
But either way, that would explain the person next to you not waking up because...
Exactly.
You're asleep, so you're not really screaming,
exactly.
Let alone screaming whisperingly.
Yes.
So she screams She says she's fully awake. She screams. She shakes him. He doesn't wake up. Suddenly, a bluish white or whitish blue beam penetrates through her window and lifts her, and then it pulls her through the wall of her apartment to outside, 12 floors above the streets of Manhattan.
Yeah.
Because, alien technology.
Yeah.
You can do that.
Tractor beam.
Sure. But that's beyond a tractor beam. That can move you and all your molecules through a wall.
Yeah.
That's not easy.
Yeah. It's a real tractor beam.
That's
Not a fake Hollywood tractor beam.
no, that's true. She was pulled along with those 3 aliens in the room with her. So I guess that's how they planned on getting back to their ship.
Yeah.
They go on the beam too. But a later witness, we'll talk about this in a little while, but described them all as being in kind of a fetal position. And as they got close to the ship that was beaming them back in, they sort of unfurled. It seems weird. Do you have to be in a fetal position when you go through walls? I don't know. Maybe you do. So they take them all in. She goes into the ship, and then the door closes behind her like a clamshell, which is good. That's clever. I like that. So she's brought into the spacecraft that apparently is just hovering there 12 floors up in lower Manhattan.
It could be cloaked.
Yeah, I suppose. I guess it's just outside her window. And they do some experimentations on her. They do some stuff to her. Like, this is why they're abducting people. They
Right.
want to know us a little better. It's like us. I figure it's like us, darting bears. You pull them in, and then you keep them asleep. You put eye drops in their eyes because you don't want them to dry out. And then you do your stuff to them, and then you put them back in the wild. It's kind of that thing.
Yeah.
So one of the things they did, though, was that they shoved they had a little stick with a thin stick with a little ball at the end of it. They shoved that up her nose really far, like a COVID-19 test. And then they pulled it out, and it no longer had the little ball on it.
They implanted
something, yeah.
Probably next to her brain.
Probably, yeah. It's an alien lobotomy, but she had an implant now.
Yeah.
She figured. So unusually, the aliens spoke to Linda. Usually, right, in these stories, they use mental telepathy. They think things and you hear it in whole chunks of information. That's the norm.
Yeah.
No. Not with Linda. They spoke to her.
Well, that's good.
But they didn't say very much, and what they said was a little weird. They said, and I quote,
In English.
Written out, Nobby egg, hobby egg.
Oh.
No cave, cobby egg, no cave. Fact. That's what she said they said to her.
Huh.
So maybe she got it garbled. I don't know. Or maybe that's a true alien language. I don't know, because it doesn't sound like an alien language. It sounds kind of like
That's
Pig Latin.
But that's her interpretation of it.
Yes.
So
Nobby egg, hobby egg. No cave, cobby egg, no cave. So it's like Hawaiian Pig Latin. It does. That's Linda. So anyway, I don't know what they thought she was going to know what they were saying. I don't know.
Yeah.
Use the mental telepathy, guys. We know you have it. As I mentioned earlier, Linda was not all that shook by this incident. The aliens abducted her. They did their thing, and they put her back into her room. I don't know how long, it doesn't say, but presumably a little bit of time went by, an hour, 2 hours, I don't know. But they put her back into her bed after all the probing and prodding, and she went right back to sleep. Then the next morning, she called Bud Hopkins, and she told him her story of what happened. I'll tell you why she called Bud Hopkins in a minute. No word on that whether she told her husband or not, or if she was pissed at him for not waking up to protect her from the alien abductors. I don't know, but you'd think.
yeah.
He was still asleep, I'm sure. So what made the case stand out was the presence of witnesses. We'll talk about them in length, right? So most people get abducted alone. The vast majority of abductee stories, and almost all of them really, are, yes, I was lying alone in bed, I got abducted, they made me pregnant, I'm going to have a hybrid. I have a hybrid alien child right now. His name is Kevin.
Yeah.
Kevin Hobbyegg. And he's a good kid, but his eyes and brain are pretty big, and he's kind of skinny. So, but this one had witnesses, would later come to be multiple witnesses who saw this happen, who saw Linda float 12 stories over Manhattan and go into a ship. We'll talk about that
Really?
at length in a minute here. At least 3 people supposedly saw her. Two of them were security agents. Initially, they described as police officers, and they were with a quote-unquote world leader that they were protecting. They were kind of bodyguards at the time at 3:15 in the morning under a bridge in Lower Manhattan. So
that makes sense. They were security detail outside of the safe house.
The reason we know about these two agents who witnessed the Linda Cortile abduction was because they wrote UFO researcher Bud Hopkins in February of 1991, about, 15, 16 months after the event happened. These letter writers said, quote, "We can't live with ourselves," because they had kept silent about this event, but that they believed may have cost Linda her life.
Oh.
I'll tell you why. Because the two agents claimed that they were parked under a bridge beneath Franklin Roosevelt Drive. Apparently, this is how you protect world leaders. Not sure how that works. When they saw a reddish-orange object flashing kind of green lights in the sky above them, right? Then they saw these three, quote, strange figures and a, quote, young woman in a white gown, I think that means a nightgown, floating from an apartment window and into a UFO. Hopkins was apparently convinced that it's the real thing, and there was two men writing this letter to him because they signed it, quote, Richard and Dan.
No contact information?
No, not even last
Lord.
names, let alone contact information.
Did they give the exact date?
I don't know if they gave the exact date or not.
I mean, you'd think they would, so they could match it up.
Yeah. Later, Cortile would kind of enhance the story, and we'll go into more of her enhancements a little bit later, but she claimed that her son had been abducted about 2 months before she said she was abducted. And then she kind of augmented a little further in saying that the craft that she had been taken in had crashed into the East River in New York City. This is why, remember, the letter was written 50 months later.
Right.
This is why Richard and Dan said, we were worried about her because we saw her taken into the craft, and the craft then slammed into the East River. So, oh my God,
okay.
did everybody die? What happened? Was it a crash? That was the detail that was included in the letter by Richard and Dan, but it was kind of an add-on. It wasn't in her first version of the story. And again, the letter came a good 15 months after the initial event.
Well, wait, how would she know if the craft crashed?
Because she was in it. So she was in the craft when it went into the East River.
Oh, I assumed it was after they dropped her back off it.
No.
Oh,
It picked her up, got her and her three friends, her three alien friends into the craft, closed like a clamshell, and then slammed into the East River. So then it became a USO now, didn't it? Okay. And the reason Richard and Dan wrote the letter to Bud Hopkins is because they had heard of him as his alien abduction experience, and they thought that maybe that Hopkins could help them find her or find out what happened to her. Because again, they thought, did she die?
But they left no contact information.
No.
Hopkins
They would write him, not the other way
help.
around. Oh, they also sent him cassette tapes of them.
Oh, so there were multiple.
There were multiple communications.
Okay.
Oh no, we're not done with Richard and Dan by any stretch. So Hopkins later, I guess he then he knew who it was. He knew that they could only be described in the Linda Cortile. So he contacted Linda, and he said, "Hey, I guess I gave them your address, and you might have a couple of police officers visiting you very soon." She said, "Cool." And
What do you mean he gave them her address?
How did he give them their address? Because I think he also talked to them on the phone. I'm not positive, though. I know he communicated through letter and they sent him cassette tapes. I don't know, to be honest with you. It gets really weird, too, because later it turns out they claimed they had known where she was and had been tracking her for a year. It makes no sense at all, because then why are they contacting Bud Hopkins? It makes zero sense, really. It's weird. But anyway, somehow, I'm not completely sure how, but Hopkins arranges for them to know who Linda Cortile is and where she lives, and they go, and they indeed do go pay her a visit. And it's very emotional, and they're so glad she's alive and that kind of stuff. So again, he only knows them by letters, by tapes that they send him. He doesn't know any last names. He knows nothing about them, any sense of who they were or what they, if they said what they were was true. And later, eventually, they would tell Hopkins that if he wanted to communicate to them, he should do so through Linda Cortile.
Oh.
Interesting. So it's going to get weirder, as it often does in this podcast. In April of 1991, so now a couple months after the first letter from Dan and Richard, It seems that agents Dan and possibly Richard, either agents Dan and Richard or possibly just Richard. It depends on the version. Like all stories, they're always have different versions, even for something that happened not all that long ago. They are just Richard confront. I'm assuming it's just the better source that I read said it was just Richard this time. Richard confronted Linda on a New York street. Just she's out walking around, and suddenly he's there. So, hi, Richard. Oh, hi, Linda, if that's your real name, because he says, "Get in the car with me. We want to talk to you."
Don't do it, Linda.
Don't do it, Linda. She said, She's not a dummy.
Yeah, she's not.
So Richard picked her up bodily as she struggled there on the streets of New York.
So he kidnapped
He forced her into his car, slammed the door, and got in and drove off.
Wow.
Yeah. Richard and possibly Dan, again, depending on the source, had apparently soured on Linda because remember, it was very emotional. They were glad she's alive. Now, though, they drove around for 3.5 hours along the streets of New York, interrogating her mercilessly. They wanted to know, hey, are you working for the government? Remember, they work for the government.
Yeah.
They're government agents. Are you an alien? They made her remove her shoes because it turns out aliens don't have toes.
Oh.
Now, you might think, wait, I thought aliens were those big-eyed, gray, big-headed, skinny guys, right? So if they can make themselves look human, they must be shapeshifters. And if they're shapeshifters, they apparently have not mastered...
Make toes.
They've mastered fingers. They've mastered ears. They've mastered eyeballs that move. They have not mastered toes. So she had toes. That was good. She couldn't be an alien. And he let her go. He or they let her go. Dan was not done yet, though. Dan, in October of 1991, so another 6 months later, he was now working solo on this one, and he again snatched Linda from off the streets in New York City. This time, though, instead of driving her around, he brought her to a beach house.
Oh, nice.
That was very nice, actually. It appears to be his beach house. So they made some good government agent quiche in New York. Okay.
Well, it didn't say where. Maybe it was on Jersey Shore.
Maybe it was. Still, that's not bad. Well, I have a little place in the Hamptons. I think.
Well, who knows what the Jersey Shore was like in 1991?
That's true. Was it? What are you saying? Are you saying bad things about the Jersey Shore?
Well, I'm saying it might not have been, might not have been the high rent district.
Is it the high rent district?
I don't know.
I don't either. So, Dan, I don't know. All I know is they have a TV show about it, and they're horrible, horrible, awful people.
Well, you don't really know.
They're
that
orange,
for
Carrie.
real.
They're orange, and they take steroids. Possibly Dan was there. It's hard to say. I'm sorry. Possibly Richard was there, or he's going to show up later. We'll get to it, but it seems like initially it was just Dan. Dan was doing this on his own, right? Linda was a little bit weirded out when she looked at, I guess they're in his living room of his beach house, and she looked at the wall and she saw 2 framed pictures of herself. One of them was of her kissing her son.
What?
I don't know. Just don't be weird. It was just her, her.
No, I know.
So like surveillance pictures, I don't know. And
Doesn't
he
matter.
frames them.
Yeah.
A little weird. Dan asked Linda to undress and put on a nightgown, a white nightgown, very much like the one she had been kidnapped in, abducted by aliens back in 1989. She says, I don't want to do that. And she finally agrees she'll put it on over her clothes, but not undress her. She doesn't know anything about the male fantasy world. Okay, that's just not cool, Linda. You don't put on the nightgown over your clothes, dumb bitch. So, what?
Watch it.
Okay, my bad.
I'm on Linda's side on this one.
I am too.
I think she's pretty fucking smart.
I think she is too. So apparently, her putting the nightgown on over her clothes, that was enough for Dan. I think he was pretty horny because he starts putting the moves on Linda and he tries to get her in the sack.
Really?
Okay. Oh, yeah. Carrie, come on. Linda says no, and she means no, but she must have got a kind of a rapey vibe because at the first chance she gets, she flees. She takes off.
She must have kind of got a rapey vibe.
Put on this nightgown. Put it on. Put it on. So she leaves. She runs onto the beach, right? And Dan runs after her. He catches her, I guess, at the waterline, at the water's edge there. And he takes 2 fingers and he pokes him into the back of her neck, pretending that it's a gun and telling her that's a gun. You know, that trick that some toddlers might fall for, and tells her it's a gun, so she better stop fighting him. He then forces her head into the water, and he dunks her once, and then twice, and then a third time. And Linda says, oh, this time I thought I was going to drown. And he's raving incoherently the whole time. So it's quite the adventure. And luckily, a quote-unquote force then hits Dan and knocks him back onto the sand. And so she's free. She gets up. She runs along the beach. And she hears a sound behind her that to her, like some kind of clicking sound, I guess, because she interprets it originally as a cocking of a gun. So he thinks, oh, my God, he's going to shoot me. Yeah. So she wisely turns around. Because, you slow down and turn around when someone's got a gun. And she sees that Dan is in pursuit of her, and he's snapping pictures of her. Because, Dan's a pro, okay?
Wow.
So he's a photojournalist. I don't know. Linda kept running. Good for Linda. When suddenly Richard, Dan's partner, appears out of nowhere at her side. I guess keeping pace, running. Suddenly he's just there. She turns around, see him taking pictures. So she turns back around. Whoa, there's Richard. Where did he come from? And he's running with her. Richard tries to get her to calm down. And he says, just calm down. Come back to the beach house with me.
Sure.
Don't worry about Dan. I will drug him and put him to sleep. I'll give him a drug and a drink. So it seems like chivalry was not dead, just really slow
and she believes him?
She absolutely does. She goes back to the beach house with Richard and Dan. Richard then takes Dan and dumps him in the shower to clean off all the mud and stuff like that.
Mud?
He was at the water, remember? The sand. Muddy sand, whatever, the wet sand from his clothes. I mean, he's been in the sand. He's been rolling around. He's got the finger gun.
And the camera that must have been in his pocket.
I just realized now, why does she think he's clicking a gun when he has to use a finger gun? If he had a gun, Linda, when you heard
did she know that
sound,
at the time?
Yeah, but he knew she didn't have a gun because at some point she's got to realize he's got fingers. Do you really think a fingers is going to mimic a gun? No, I don't know. Anyway, this is her story.
Yeah, I don't know. When you're scared.
Okay, she's scared. You're right.
Yeah.
Okay. So Richard puts Dan in the shower and turns on the water like he's a drunk. And she decides, you know what, I'm going to case this joint a little bit and look around. And she finds a couple of things. One of the things she finds is some correspondence on CIA letterhead.
Of course.
They're CIA
because
agents.
That's how they do it.
Damn right they do. And you know how you know they're CIA agents? Because they have CIA letterhead in their beach house.
Uh-huh.
So clearly we know it. So they were government agents. And I mentioned initially the story was that they're police officers, but that quickly and other communications from them soon after, they described themselves as government agents or something like that. So now we find out they're CIA agents here in October of 1991. So they released Linda, and what did she do? She ran right to Bud Hopkins' home, and she told him all about her latest adventure. He naturally believes her because Bud Hopkins was Bud Hopkins, and he believes everything. Yeah. Also, he's as bad as John Mack in this regard. Also, she had sand in her hair, and she looked kind of disheveled. So, checks out. She was pretty shaken up, too. More shaken up than when she was abducted by aliens and put back in her bed. Also, Richard would mail Hopkins the pictures that Dan took while he was pursuing Linda on the beach.
Okay.
So someone took pictures of her.
Why would he take pictures of her?
Why? Because you're chasing after someone you tried to rape.
But this is 1991, so he had a camera in his pocket.
He has a camera. Absolutely. This.
What size were cameras in 1991?
They're pretty small cameras.
Did
you can put it, like say you had a coat on or something like that. You can put it in a coat pocket, sure. What Linda didn't explain, though, is how Dan had thought to grab a camera as he was pursuing her, but didn't think to grab a camera when he saw that UFO up in the sky back in 1989.
Well, he was in the car.
Where's more likely to have a camera, in the car or in your pocket as you pursue a rape victim on the beach?
Why would he have a camera when he was on the job in the car?
Well, originally, remember, they were supposedly doing some kind of a police stakeout of some sort.
You didn't say stakeout. You said they were protecting
you're right. Well, you might have to, I think.
I don't know. I don't know why they'd have a camera.
Okay. It all checks out then.
I mean, when he abducted her and brought her to his beach house and
Yeah.
he wanted
He's going to take
to-
some pics. I see what you mean.
Yeah.
He's going to do some penthouse farm action.
so
going
that
on
could be
there, yeah.
why he already had the camera.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep.
Okay. A month later, November 1981, Richard wrote Bud Hopkins that, you know what? He just had a memory. This is Richard now. Richard's the, I
Good
guess,
one.
a little more
Yeah.
chivalrous one.
Yeah.
The not so rapey one. He, however, said that he remembered having had dreams of a girl during his childhood. The girl's name was Baby Ann, which is a fantastic name, by the way. Hopkins told this to Linda. This jogged a memory in her mind as well. She remembered that she had an imaginary friend named Mickey. They're about the same age. She goes, oh my God, Mickey must have been Richard.
What?
That's what she figures.
And she was Baby Ann?
She must have been, I think that makes her
Why?
Baby Ann.
Why?
Well, how else could you explain this? That's a rhetorical question.
I
So,
think Richard and Dan are my imaginary friends, bread and butter.
you had imaginary friends named Bread and Butter.
Yeah.
Were they human?
Yes.
Question then, why were the names Bread and Butter if they were human?
I
Seems
don't
like that'd
know.
be like teddy bears or something like that, not humans.
No, they were human.
Okay. All right.
And they invited me over to their house.
Well, that's starting to get a little gross. They were pedophiles, Gary. How old were you? How old? Gary, how old?
They were children.
Oh,
like
they were
me.
children too.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's a little better.
What kids have adult imaginary friends?
No, I thought they were adults. You were a
know.
kid, and you're.
I know, but-
Oh, I see. Adult. I don't know. I think a lot. Wasn't there a movie about
No. Well, that's a movie.
that? Oh, okay.
In real life,
Are all
kids'
imaginary
friends are kids.
Yeah, I guess if your imaginary friend is a grown ass man, that's a
Yeah,
bad thing.
yes.
It's a warning. It's a red flag. So I'm not sure how to explain the whole Mickey, Baby Ann thing.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
But she also remembered. Oh, because the rest does. She also remembered that under the guidance of apparently some friendly, sexy, voyeuristic aliens, Mickey / Richard had eventually had sex with Linda. I'm assuming this was years later. I'm assuming this went
hope.
on for
Okay.
some time. And so that meant, yes, Richard was the real father of Linda's eldest son, Johnny. Thankfully, Linda's husband, Steve, it was said that he never actually read the book that Bud Hopkins wrote about the Linda Cortile case.
Yeah.
The whole sordid story. So he did not find out that his eldest son was not his son and was really some kind of a bizarre, once removed alien love child.
No, Richard's not an alien.
Yeah, but aliens kind of made it happen. They kind of pimped her, right? Under their guidance, they bonded and grew together and eventually started having sex. That's what she said.
Oh, okay.
So it's a little weird. It's a little alien-esque. It's alien adjacent. They're not. You're right. Johnny's not a hybrid, but his parent is a little strange. So also, by the way, by not reading that book, he didn't find out that his wife was completely insane. But so there's a good call on Steve's part.
I'll bet he had an idea.
Maybe. There was also another witness, right? The third man. Remember who we were talking about, the world leader? He must have seen it too if he was in the car with Richard and Dan back
So
then
he
in
was the car.
1989.
He was in the brownstone. They were just outside.
No, he was in the car.
Oh, he was?
Yes, he was.
Okay.
So he was also an eyewitness. In
That
fact,
doesn't
later,
make any sense.
Carrie, don't question it. Hey, Dora. So this person, this world leader, Bud Hopkins surmised eventually that he was none other than Javier Perez de Cuellar, who was at the time the Secretary General of the United Nations. He was from Ecuador.
Okay.
So and he said this, Hopkins claimed, okay, Perez de Cuellar witnessed this famous abduction case that I write in a book about. This made the case even more notorious, of course. Now you've thrown in a pretty well-known, at the time, a pretty well-known person. He's the head of the UN. Hopkins found this out from when Dan wrote still another letter, and eventually he admitted they weren't police officers, that indeed they were government agents, and that they were driving de Cuellar. I guess they weren't parked; they were driving in the area de Cuellar at about 3:15 in the morning through that part of Manhattan. That's why.
Maybe it was
3:15 in the morning.
on the way to the airport. Got an early
I don't
flight.
know. Maybe so. Here's the thing, though. They also said that supposedly, in fact, de Cuellar was not just a witness. He was a fellow abductee.
Oh.
Perez de Cuellar also was abducted that night, not just Linda. And according to the letter, Perez de Cuellar urged people to just kind of let it go because the UN was working with these abduction-happy aliens to end the Cold War, which apparently worked.
Yeah.
Because not that long after, the Cold War indeed was over.
That's
so
right.
that's good for them. Good on them. De Cuellar officially denied the entire event, and his office that handled the schedule said no, he was at home at 3:15 in the morning on November 30th, 1989, in bed.
Well, of course they'd say that.
Yeah, I know. So you're right. If he was abducted by aliens, you probably don't want to say so. We'll come to it when I talk about issues with this. We'll talk about why there's other reasons to believe that probably didn't happen to Perez de Cuellar. Okay. But luckily, Bud Hopkins had other witnesses. He started getting communications from more witnesses. So, here's the story. We got a couple witnesses. Do we need more? Yeah, we should always. Suddenly,
of course, yeah.
different letters come from different people saying they had seen it too. The first of these was from a woman named Janet Kimball. Janet was a 60-year-old retired telephone operator from upstate New York. She claimed she had been driving across the Brooklyn Bridge at the time when suddenly all cars came to a dead stop. In fact, sometimes this is called the Brooklyn Bridge case. Oh. And this is why. This is actually a pretty dramatic event. So Janet
we
said...
know that's what happened.
And again, we don't know this until the story it's 2 years after the story happened, and it's even now many months after there's been these various communications from Richard and Dan, and Bud Hopkins has been telling the story with Linda. We'll talk about that in a minute at UFO cases. So now this must have jogged the memory of Janet.
Yeah.
Who said that, okay, so they're on the Brooklyn Bridge. It's at 3:15 in the morning, so apparently there's a lot of, it's New York. So there's lots of cars on the bridge.
Yep.
And all the cars come to this dead stop. She said that from that point, you can see Janet's apartment complex in her apartment building, her high-rise, and that she indeed saw Linda, who she named a woman in a nightgown,
right,
in a white nightgown, and 3 aliens being floated from the 12th floor apartment unit into a spaceship. She saw the whole thing. Mm-hmm. She said at the time she thought that some movie studio was filming a movie, a science fiction movie, and that's what she was witnessing.
They do it.
Yes,
yeah.
Because they do. They absolutely do. They really float on wires. Apparently, they float people out of their apartment, through walls, out of their apartment. That's what she thought.
She was a little ways away. She couldn't see all the detail.
Yeah, she couldn't, could she? So, but she knew there were 3 aliens. Interesting. Okay. So Janet looked around her to see what other people were doing and what her fellow commuters were doing, and they were, quote, running all around their cars with their hands on their heads, screaming from horror and disbelief. For Janet never returned to New York City again. She was spooked.
Huh.
You might be wondering why none of these terrified, screaming people, bridge witnesses, ever came forward.
Where are all the 911 recordings?
I wonder too. They didn't have cell phones. This is 1981. 1989. So there were no cell phones. So that checks. But you know what you do after the spaceship goes away into the East River and you continue driving? Then you call someone.
True.
Or more than one person 2 years later tells the story.
Right.
Most likely.
Yeah.
Maybe they had the red thing, the Men in Black thing, for the whole bridge, and Janet somehow wasn't affected.
Maybe their memories were wiped.
Let's assume. So Hopkins spoke with Janet Kimball, allegedly, about Linda's experience, and apparently Linda had got cold feet because she quickly didn't want anything to do with the story anymore. And quote, "I wouldn't pursue this any further, Bud," she said to him. "I just want to drop it now." So luckily for Bud, yes, there's another witness lurking in the weeds. Of course there is.
In the weeds?
Yes. Why not? They're out there. They're always out there. You need another witness? I think in this case, when he needed another witness, he tended to get another witness.
No, I'm saying they'd be waiting in the wings or something.
I like lurking
in the weeds.
I prefer. I just thought I liked that better. Her name is Marilyn Kilmer. These are both Janet and Marilyn. They're pseudonyms that Bud gave them when he wrote his book. He gave them fake names. So Marilyn said that she was abducted by aliens along with Linda. So she was more than a witness. She was, again, another fellow abductee. So it wasn't only Javier Perez de Cuellar, but it was her as well. And she did see him, by the way.
Oh, okay.
So she saw de Cuellar as well.
Oh, he was abducted at the same moment?
Yes, he was abducted as well.
Oh, I thought.
That kind of got grafted on, and then Marilyn agrees with that.
Sure, okay.
She knew, by the way, that it was Perez de Cuellar because she was shown a picture of him and said, yep, that's the guy.
Yeah.
So he was abducted along with me and Linda. Marilyn also eventually clammed up and would deny the whole story, saying, quote, Bud and Linda know the truth. Did they get to her? Or did she just not want to go along with it anymore? And finally, there was Francesca.
Oh.
Francesca was someone who lived nearby. I don't get the sense if she lived in the same apartment complex as Linda or just nearby, but she lived nearby. And she remembered, a couple of years later at least, she remembered having seen a strange light in the sky around that time. She couldn't be positive it was November 30th at 3:15, but she remembered it was right around then. Yeah. And it was in the same area. And she also thought that Francesca, you know what? I might have been abducted as well. I'm not 100%, but I could have been. So she started talking about her being abducted. I guess she's talking about Hopkins. I guess her 8-year-old son was within earshot, because then her 8-year-old son started telling her, Mommy, I think I was abducted by aliens. Francesca stopped claiming she was abducted by aliens at that point and denied it from then on. To her credit, there are consequences, people, for these delusions.
He's getting serious here.
Well, I mean, there are.
How does she know her son wasn't abducted?
Okay, all right.
Or was Francesca admitting she was lying at that moment?
At this point, she took it back.
Oh, okay.
And said it's not true. Now, someone could say, well, she did it to protect her child who had this terrible memory. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I do know, but that you could say that, I suppose.
She's a good mom.
I think so.
Yeah.
Not a great mom, because you don't say it in the first. Honey, get Mama her cigarettes. I'm talking to the man on the phone. So anyway, the aliens. I'm giving her a smoker's voice. I don't know why. So,
and apparently she's Harvey Firestein.
She's Harvey Firestein. She was. It could have been. Oh my God, was it Harvey Firestein pretending to be this Francesca? That could be a drag queen name.
Yeah,
Francesca Jean Chamberlain. I don't know what that was. That would be. Francesca is the good beginnings of a drag queen name. You have to admit. Hopkins then took this. Remember, this is going on for months and months and months, and he starts going out to UFO symposiums with Linda Cortile, and they start making the whole kind of circuit of that, telling the story, and they did so for years. And again, it wasn't until 1996, I think, that he published, or 94 or 6, I can't remember, that he published his book about it. It's called Witnessed.
Are people speaking at these conferences making money?
Oh yeah. Okay. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yes, they are indeed. And Bud Hopkins was maybe the biggest celebrity you could get at these conferences. He'd written 2 bestsellers about abduction theory. Yeah. He was very well known. He's very personable. He's charismatic. So he was a big deal. And now he started bringing back Linda. Linda was now his kind of, he was writing a book about her thing, and he starts bringing her to these things, and they speak together at these events. One of the events in 1984 was a conclave in Texas put on by the local chapter of MUFON, that's the Mutual UFO Network, which historically was something that really did attempt to investigate as scientifically as possible UFO sightings, but it has kind of evolved over time, and certainly by this time to pretty much a believers only kind of an outfit. In fact, 3 of the people with MUFON who investigated this and came to think that Linda Cortile was completely full of shit were kind of almost threatened by the leader of MUFON and the other bigwigs within MUFON to shut up and to be quiet and not to publish. So This is about the period where they're kind of becoming more of an enthusiast, and they are now completely, pretty much. They're not, they're not a truly independent, oh no, we'll look at it both ways kind of a group anymore at all, I don't think. But the guy, his name was Walter Anders, he was in Texas. He was in Seguin, Texas. I don't know.
Never heard of
how
it.
you pronounce it. And he was a big in MUFON. And he was put on this big event there that they had Linda and Bud speaking at. And he said that he knew. He heard Linda's story. He said, I know what they're up to. They're all about babies. They're about hybrid alien human babies.
Sure.
He said that the aliens, you graze me, you're grazed, the big eyes, the swollen head, the small stature, the skinny limbs. He said, quote, they've been using humans to further their species. These little guys are small and fragile. They cannot reproduce like humans do. They deteriorate. They are using their sperm to create hybrid children. So they deteriorate, unquote, but they also apparently masturbate because, which makes sense for a species that has survived, I don't know, thousands or millions of years and has mastered the technology of intergalactic travel through boundless space, but they have not mastered how to procreate except by using unwilling human women. So,
well, they did master it,
so to speak.
But
they couldn't figure out how to make their own kids with a gray and a gray.
it must not been possible, Dean.
Yes, maybe so, but he seems to say it's because they're skinny and fragile, and that doesn't make sense.
Well, he doesn't really know the biology of it.
I don't know. He was a bigwig and MUFON. I think you have to trust that source.
Nah.
So Hopkins, let's talk about Hopkins a little bit because I call this section Truth Through Fakery. Hopkins had become such a big deal because he had held these free monthly self-help group therapy sessions for survivors of alien abductions for years and years and years. He was doing that through the 80s.
He's an artist.
He's an artist, so he has zero training in psychology or any kind of therapeutic techniques whatsoever. And remember, all of his subjects or his attendees already thought or wanted to think or wanted people to think that they were abducted by aliens. So, and most of the abductees told these pretty awful experiences. They were not good experiences for the most part. There's experimentation. There was invasive procedures. They're scooping stuff out. They're putting stuff in. Tons of people said they're impregnated. We've talked about this at a while ago, an episode, I don't know, a year or so. I can't remember which one, to be honest. I can't think of it. But we talked about...
It was about sexy aliens.
Yes, the alien sex one. That there are thousands of women across the world saying they've had alien babies. It's a super common thing. And maybe they all have. And you know what?
Yeah, we
Good
don't
for them,
know.
single mothers.
Who are we? We don't know.
Who are we? Who the hell are we? So almost anything you might imagine they have said has been done to them by aliens. Worse yet, though, Hopkins said that almost all these memories from these abductees were clouded. They weren't fully formed when they came to him.
That makes sense.
And why? They were very conveniently masked just enough that they're malleable and they're in their early form, but they're never clouded enough where they don't remember at all. Yeah. Seems a little convenient that Goldilocks point that they always seem to come to Bud Hopkins and others like him too.
Yes.
Again, they've mastered intergalactic travel, but they can't quite get the little red beam right and make them forget forever. Come on.
Dean.
So, but they eventually were able to remember with the help of Bud Hopkins.
Yeah.
So his favorite method was, of course, hypnotic regression.
Sure,
as
done by Dr. Mack.
Done by him. Bud Hopkins did tons of... Okay, he's an artist. He knows how to hypnotize someone and regress them, absolutely. So he would use regression to cull these memories from the subconscious. He said the memories had to be helped because, again, when they first came to him, they only remembered, quote, vague anxieties, specific phobias, bad dreams, fragmentary and disturbing memories, or what seemed like an inexplicable episode of missing time, end quote.
Yeah.
Hopkins helped shape those vague anxieties into very specific alien abduction stories.
Sure.
Into the full alien abduction experience, which invariably were very, very similar each and every time. So Hopkins, at this period, he was going on, again, daytime talk shows. He was on your Oprah. He was on your Sally Jesse Raphael or whatever the hell was back there.
Clips on YouTube?
I don't know. Huh. I bet there are. And again, this is also when Whitley Strieber, the author of Communion, was doing the same thing.
Yeah.
That, if you don't know, that was a novel about Whitley Strieber's personal alien abduction, which he was a pretty mediocre, semi-successful. He's a published science fiction writer of conventional science fiction stories. What happened is, here's my conspiracy theory, is that he was making good money. He was getting published. He was selling a decent amount of books, but he realized that if you say something that's not true is true, and this is exactly what happened. His novels sold whatever, they did well. He wrote Communion, said it was all true, and it became a publishing phenomenon. It sold millions and millions of copies. It made him a very, very rich man. It was a mega bestseller. So those two guys throughout the 80s were going on, and into the 90s were going on talking about alien abduction for years and years on all these shows.
Did you read it?
Communion, I think I did a long time ago. Like back then, it was written. It was published in '87. Like I think sometime around then. I don't remember a ton about it.
I did not, but I remember it.
And here's the thing, though. They went on all these talk shows and things like that, and events, and they got more and more abductees than came to them. It's kind of an abduction memory mill of a sort. So it was I don't know. It was quite the little cottage industry. So it also turns out, though, that Linda herself had been for years before 1989 a rabid UFO enthusiast.
Well,
for years and years. Shocker. I know you're surprised by that. She had read both of Bud Hopkins' books, published in 1981 and 1987, and lots of other material about alien abductions. I mean, she was an alien abduction enthusiast in a sense. And she also believed in UFO visitations. She'd even attended several of Hopkins' abductees group therapy sessions. So she had been going into Hopkins sessions for months before this event happened.
Abduction?
Before her own abduction, yeah. And it was during these sessions before her abduction that she, quote unquote, remembered how 13 years earlier she had found a bump by her nose. And she figured that was an implant. So she figured the Greys had been tracking her for a long time.
It's either a skin tag or an implant.
She was special. So that's why she went to Bud Hopkins when this thing happened, and she told him her story. And he thought it was really important because of the witnesses. That's why he called his book Witnessed, because it was so rare to have these alleged outside witnesses to these abduction events like he did with Richard and Dan, and then unwilling Javier Perez de Cuellar and Marilyn and Janet as well. So he wrote his book. It's called Witnessed. It's published in 1996. This is his third book. Again, he had 1981, the original book about abductions in 1987. He wrote a book called Intruders, The Incredible Visitations at Copley Woods, which was also about an abduction. So that's just like his thing. He was the king of this stuff. He would say that, quote, the importance of this case, the Linda Cortile case, is virtually immeasurable as it powerfully supports both the objective reality of UFO abductions and the accuracy of regressive hypnosis as employed with this abductee. So this was like his cornerstone case for his method and for these events he was describing. Because we all know regressive hypnosis is one of the most important methods in all of psychiatry. And it's like, oh, wait, that's right. It's complete bullshit and utterly rejected by any sensible and rational practitioner. Sorry, bud. Anyway, there are some issues. We'll go over them quickly. Dan and Richard were never identified. We don't even know their last names, let alone who they were, their affiliation, anything like that. They never came forward. They were never identified. It's basically Bud Hopkins saying, I got letters and occasional tapes from these two guys.
Yeah.
Cortile herself, as you've noticed, her tale was augmented many times. It grew and it evolved and changed over time. That's always a red flag for these kinds of stories. No one else saw a UFO crash into the East River. I know it's 315, but it's Manhattan. It's the city that never sleeps. So no one sees an...
Joyce and Marilyn didn't see it? Or
no
Janet?
one else did except, who was it? Well, allegedly Richard and Dan.
Yeah.
Okay. And again, all these people are unnamed, unidentified, anonymous people with fake names who are communicating with Bud Hopkins.
Yeah.
And possibly Linda. You see the problem there, but no one else not in that tiny circle saw a UFO crash into the East River.
I see lots of problems here.
Yeah, do you?
Okay.
It seems like that'd be a big noticeable thing, but not a single soul noticed it. So no one saw the spaceship hovering on the 12th floor other than Janet Kimball. No one else on the bridge saw that, allegedly. No one else on the bridge, as we talked about a minute ago, came forward. You think someone would notice a woman and three aliens being beamed into a spaceship in New York. The safe house thing is just clearly, that's so implausible, and so it's such a romantic trope that that's a problem. Others point out that Linda never reported 2 kidnappings, attempted murder, and attempted sexual assault. by a federal government agent. Never came forward, never reported these horrific crimes at all. So, Bud Hopkins would say later that, well, obviously we knew the authorities were in cahoots with Dan and Richard, so there's no point in telling anybody. And also, they thought this would make what they did to be legal. So it's legal. Because you work for the government, you could rape, kill, kidnap.
Sure. Well, that's her story.
This is called the Nixon Doctrine, or also called Trump logic, I believe. So, and skeptics looked into the case, and they found that they once questioned a couple of those MUFON researchers I told you. They really weren't skeptics. They were MUFON researchers, and they actually questioned Linda and Hopkins. And she allegedly asked, according to them, said, "Hey, if Dan or Richard try to kidnap me again, can I shoot them legally?" And when they told Hopkins about, and he had a couple other UFO it was the guy, Walter Anders, the MUFON guy, and a couple other people like that. They told him, you know what? We're going to publicly request a government investigation because we have 2 government agents trying to murder a civilian American. That's not okay. They basically, the UFO, Hopkins and the others, shit their pants.
Yeah.
Those investigators said that they, quote, appear to literally panic. And then they said, no, we want nothing to do with that. Because theoretically, they surmised that it was because, you can get in trouble for false reporting a crime by a government agent. So those investigators, they went to Linda's apartment complex, and they found that there was a guardhouse there that was 24 hours staffed at all times. No one there, and this is not that long. They did this investigation in late 91, early 92. So it wasn't that long after the event from late 1989. There were no reports by any of the staff there of any lights in the sky. They went to the apartment manager, and he said, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. None of the 1,600 residents in this complex said anything about lights in the sky or anything like that being seen back in November of 1989 or ever. The apartment complex is right, literally, where she would have been hovering in the air was right across the street from the loading docks of the New York Post.
Oh.
If you know anything about publishing, at 315, it's a busy area.
Yeah.
No one there saw any event happening just 12 stories above them. When those investigators asked Bud Hopkins if he had done any of this kind of just pretty basic legwork, he said no, and that he thought it was, quote, unnecessary.
Yeah.
So that tells you a little bit about his methodology or lack thereof. And also, I mentioned earlier, there was also that point about, in later letters, Richard and Dan said they had actually known who Linda was for a full year and were tracking her.
Right.
Which the original story said that they came forward because they wanted Bud to help find her.
It was, and make sure she was okay.
They screwed up.
Yeah.
Is what basically what happened there. Oh shit, we forgot our story, kind of a thing. So and why go to this UFO enthusiast? They're government agents. They can use their own means, you would think, to find out who this person was. We go back to the Perez de Cuellar thing. American agents would not be protecting the UN Secretary General. The UN has its own security.
You're really debunking all of this?
Well, this is what people have said.
Oh, okay.
Okay. No, it's not me. This is the researchers have pointed these facts out about this story. So, and also moving the Secretary General around is a big deal. It's not 2 dudes in a car in a Malibu driving through the streets of Lower Manhattan. It's a whole big deal. The security knows about it. UN headquarters knows about where he is every minute of every day.
Yeah.
If that car was caught in unexpected, traffic jam or something like that, they know about that.
Yeah.
And they have eyes on it, or at least they're aware of what's happening, and there's reports coming back to UN headquarters. So he's abducted and is gone for some amount of time, but no one ever knows about it. I mean, it's impossible. And so Dan, by the way, during his story said that he was so traumatized by what happened that he was institutionalized for a short time and went into a mental institution to recover. And while he wrote one of those letters on a typewriter while he was in the institution.
Yeah.
They compared that to the other letters. It was the same typewriter. So apparently that mental institution is pretty lax with what you bring in. Apparently they allow you to bring in typewriters. Some people think that's a little unlikely. And just the whole thing, really generally speaking, is that Bud Hopkins, like a lot of those people, he works alone. He interviews these people alone. He has associates, but when the key stuff is happening, he's alone. He's one-on-one with the supposed witness or the abductee or whatever. So at the end of the day, you really have to believe that these people exist. They said what he said. They said that all the things that they say happened really happened. outside of their imagination.
Are all the names that we do know pseudonyms?
Yes.
Okay.
Turns out even Linda Cortile is a pseudonym.
That's what I was going to say. So we
Yes.
can't look up Linda
No,
Cortile.
we can. We can. We know who she is.
Oh.
So Linda Cortile was not really Linda Cortile. She was actually Linda Napolitano.
Oh.
Her husband was from Italy, Steve, and he moved to the United States when he was 17. Bud Hopkins gave her the Cortile pseudonym to write his book, like he did the others.
Yeah.
So after a couple of years on the UFO speaker circuit, some people thought, let's find out who she is, and they did pretty quickly and pretty easily find out that she's Linda Napolitano, mother of two, blah blah blah, etc. She had been, they found out, a singer and a model before marrying and having kids under the name Lynn. So, I don't know. Some people have said that she liked the limelight. She liked to be the center of attention.
Well.
I don't know if that's true or not.
Yeah.
7 years after the whole affair, Linda once again showed up at Bud Hopkins' door looking, a little out of sorts. It had happened again.
Oh, no.
She had almost been kidnapped a third time, this time while she was with her cousin Connie. So thankfully she had a witness, right? So she tells Bud Hopkins about this, but apparently he had maybe tired of the game a little bit, and which is kind of unusual for him because he just believes everything. And he asked to speak to Connie directly to verify the story. Linda then promptly left his house. A little while later, Connie called Bud Hopkins to corroborate Linda's story. He takes the call. He's with his wife. He hangs up the phone. And he says, quote, "That was Linda pretending to be her cousin Connie." So he was happy. "Hi, this is Linda. This is Connie. Sorry, everything Linda said is true. Bye." So he even at this point, even Bud Hopkins is going, okay.
Yeah.
So for Mac, let's wrap up with John Mack. He felt that his and Bud Hopkins' research into this was, quote, amply corroborated, and it validated alien abductions. He was a true believer.
Wow.
He believed that the abduction phenomenon is in some central way involved in a breeding program that results in the creation of alien-human hybrid offspring. So he's a believer in the alien-human hybrid phenomenon.
Okay.
And so he also thought that it was like a warning from aliens. This has become a trope now, a Captain Planet kind of trope, but it's a warning that we humans are screwing up our planet.
That's right.
Because the reason he thought this is because a lot of the abductees, most of them came out with a, quote, commitment to changing their relationship to the Earth.
Oh.
So he became involved in some really high-profile UFO cases, but one eventually this is John Mack, came back to bite him in the ass. A Boston writer came to him and said that she was abducted and she was taken into a spaceship with Nikita Khrushchev and John F. Kennedy, and it was during the Cuban Missile Crisis. So I don't know if she's saying it is back in 1962 or they time traveled. I'm not clear on that.
Yeah.
But the woman taped their session, and apparently it didn't look good for John. And also, it was an ambush. She was a not believer. She sold or gave her tape of that session with John Mack to Time magazine.
Oh.
They then published a piece on him, pretty much ridiculing him, calling it, quote, the man from outer space.
Oh.
So he was embarrassed by that. He had another one, too, that was equally weird. His answer to that, though, was to bring 5 abductees that he had interviewed and hypnotically regressed in the past onto the Oprah Winfrey Show. Yes, of them. Some of them, by the way, had alien human babies, by the way. So case closed. I think he proved his point. There was almost nothing about the alien abduction phenomenon he did not believe. Even Bud Hopkins would say later that Mack was, quote, gullible. Now, this is from the guy who didn't check anything Linda Cortile said because he thought it was unnecessary. So that guy thinks they're gullible. That's not good. Mack eventually got into things like psychic healing, the whole consciousness thing, remote viewing, communicating with the dead, everything.
Yeah.
But then in 2011, he was in London. He got off the tube there at about 11 o'clock in the suburb of London. And in America, before you pop onto the street, you look left, then right. He looked left, and from the right side, a Peugeot slammed into him driven by a drunken driver and killed him.
Oh, darn it.
So you wonder how bad the alien abduction hybrid thing is, right? There was a Roper poll done during this time that was actually commissioned by Robert Bigelow. He was the I can't remember when it was. It was in the 2000s. He's the guy who owned Skinwalker Ranch, which we'll eventually do an episode on. He's a millionaire.
Yeah.
He commissioned this. So it was well into the 2000s. I can't remember which year, but they asked 6,000 respondents. They didn't want to ask. They wanted to get at how many people have been abducted by aliens, right?
Yeah.
So they didn't want to say, "Hey, have you ever been abducted by an alien?" They thought that would be people would deny it. Just they're embarrassed by it, right?
Sure.
So what they did is they asked a bunch of questions, 5 of which they thought would test this idea that you were abducted by aliens. These were things like, have you ever been woken up paralyzed with the sense of a strange presence or person in the room? Which, as we know, is a thing, is a hypnopompic dream.
Yeah, I'd have to say yes to that.
So, as would I. If they'd asked if they ever missed time, 14 shots of tequila would do that. They had asked if they ever had a feeling or sensation of flying. Everyone who's ever dreamed has had that. And they are also asked if they had seen balls of light in the room. And they're finally asked if they had any puzzling scars. But those were the 5 kind of, if you answered yes to those, you may have been an alien abductee. So they also asked kind of a trick question. It was if, quote, Trondent held any secret meaning for them. And if people who said yes to that were tossed because, okay, those people are just weird.
Right.
So the 2% of the respondents, 119 people, said that they had had at least 4 of those 5 experiences. So Roper extrapolated this to say that 3.7 million adult Americans have been abducted by aliens.
So if I have 3 of those, I'm not an abductee. Okay.
No, but if you have 4, boom, you're an abductee.
I only have 3.
Yeah, I think I do too. So, whew. All right, because I do not wish to be probed.
I have dreamt that I could fly.
Every human being has dreamt that they're flying.
And I just now remembered it.
I think they can remember. I think they're asking though that have you had the sensation of flying? But
I had the sensation in my dream. Yeah.
Okay. So Hopkins, he actually pared that back to 560,000. He was like, whoa. Even I think Roper's full of shit at 3.7 million. But he said 560,000 people have been abducted by aliens. A lot of them having kids. So my request to Ancestry.com is you better figure out how to handle this in the DNA test because there's a lot of Adrian Hyde. Anytime you see somebody with big head and big eyes, happy. So I'll end with this. The obvious thing is that it was all just a figment of Linda Cortile's imagination, or more likely a story she told to make money, to be famous. At one point, she thought she was getting half of the book money.
Oh.
But Hopkins had to disabuse her of this whole half thing, but she did apparently share in the profits.
Yeah, well.
Not half. And of course, she went on the circuit. And of course, again, it's said she loved the attention.
Did she stay married?
Yes, she did. Yes, she did.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah, it's good for Steve. Steve's a solid guy. He's just a heavy sleeper. So leave him alone. So those researchers I mentioned from MUFON who looked into her and found a lot of holes in her story, they found a big one, though. They found that there's a science fiction novel called Night Eyes that was published. It hit bookstores in April of 1989. It's about 7 months after Linda's event, right? It was written by a guy named Garfield Reeves Stevens.
You mean before the event?
Before the event,
yeah.
Okay. And it told the story of 2 women, Sarah and Wendy, who were abducted by aliens. The similarities of what fictionally happened to Sarah and Wendy and what supposedly factually happened to Linda Cortile, or nay Napolitano, are pretty striking.
Yeah.
So they both had the UFO hovering by a high-rise in New York City, in Manhattan. They both had 2 government agents. In this case, they were on a stakeout parked below, and they saw it from there, which, by the way, was much closer to the original version of that story, right?
Yeah.
They both had kidnappings. In fact, the book has a kidnapping by grabbing her off the streets of New York and dumping her into his car and grilling her as they drive around New York. They had Dan, the agent Dan, hospitalized for emotional trauma. They had Linda taken to a safe house on the beach. They had the romantic entanglements between her and Dan, and her and Richard, or not with Dan so much as Richard. They had the Dan character taking pictures of her on the beach as he chased after her. They had the letters from other witnesses coming forward. Eventually, it's all there.
Wow.
So one of the characters even contacted a prominent Sarah Wendy's. The argument is that she sort of merged those 2 persons into her,
right?
And that character in the book had even contacted a famous UFO researcher during her ordeal, after her ordeal. So, it's pretty clear, at least these investigators flat out state it. They say, we believe she just stole the story from this novel
Right,
and
well,
told it as her own.
If all of that is true,
It's all true.
and I'm not saying it is, but
I
if
haven't
all
read
of that
Night
is
Eyes,
true,
but
then sure, it sounds like it.
yeah, it does. So that is the story of Linda Cortile, the Brooklyn Bridge abductee.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I know I've never heard of it.
You said, I know I've never heard of it?
I said I know why I've never heard of it.
Why?
Because it's just not my
The book...
interest area. I wouldn't,
No. I don't know if the book was made into any kind of a... I don't know. You think this would be all over a History Channel miniseries or a,
Yeah. Well, maybe because
schlocky
it's
movie.
just too ridiculous.
It's got some great points. It's probably a decent book. And I'm sorry, an interesting story told factually by a believable person.
Yeah, well.
Yeah. That's it.
Well, thanks,
Hope
Dean.
you enjoyed that story of alien abduction.
A wacky, wacky story of Linda Cortile.
We'll bring you Betty and Barney Hill one of these days, too. That's at least there's a little more seriousness to that story.
Yeah.
That's all. Tell them where they can find us and that kind of stuff.
Oh,
The usual stuff?
Yep, the usual. People are smart.
People are smart. That's true.
Google Weird World Podcast
Right on.
and you'll find us.
Is that true? I'm going to do that right now.
Okay.
All right. See you
Okay.
guys.
Bye.
Thanks.